We're being told that the trans movement and transgender medicine, well, it's all about helping young people accept themselves, that it's all about love and tolerance. But the dirty little secret being kept from the unsuspecting public, and especially from otherwise protective parents, is there's another side of this movement lurking just behind the scenes, one that has as its goal the sexualization of minors, which will inevitably leave them easy targets for those who would prey upon them, or even worse. Alix Aharon of the Gender Mapping Project once again joins us to help unmask one of the darkest aspects of the trans movement, the use and influence of pornography to create a hypersexualized culture which is influencing young people in very dangerous ways.
Like you said, their barriers are being broken each time because it's like a ceiling. You know, they're getting to that ceiling. It's not enough. They want to break it. They want to get to the next ceiling. They want to get to the next one. And when you take that into the world around you, when you're 15 years old or 14 years old and you take that into the world around you, it's no surprise to me that their female, friends, female schoolmates are now not feeling comfortable in their female bodies and are seeking transition or don't want to be girls anymore. Or maybe these girls have thought, maybe I should have a look at this. Maybe I should get into this. Lots of teenage girls are looking at porn. I can only imagine. In fact, I know what happens. I think it rewires their brain.
Well, we'll hear from Alix next in this third and final segment of this crucial series on unmasking the hidden dangers of transgender medicine and the hypersexualized dynamics of the trans movement, which is creating a very dangerous situation for unsuspecting minors and young adults and for the general public, as waiting in the wings are some very serious and hidden dangers. Next, on the Predator Watch podcast.
Predator Watch finds a brief overview of important stories in the news or issues of concern as they relate to understanding the nature of sexual predators, their characteristics, how their minds operate, their methods of manipulation, and what motivates them. They hide in plain sight, can smell an opportunity a mile away, and count on people not understanding just how dark their hearts are and how intent they are about always producing victims. Stay tuned as John Euler, a licensed professional counselor with over 25 years of professional experience treating both survivors and sexual predators, shares his insights on this edition of Predator Watch.
We pick up where we left off in the last part of the interview, the second part, where Alix was just describing the concerns about the hypersexualization of girls taking place within the media.
Yeah, and like you're saying with J-Lo, I mean, a lot of the time, the girls are coming ready to the porn set, whether or not they reach it. I mean, they're being groomed by the Nicki Minaj, by the WAP, by these things, by these highly bizarre deviant behaviors. They're coming ready. They're preparing them for a life of pornography. Whether or not they end up on a porn set is something totally different. Maybe they are being groomed for that. And that's the culture that is doing that to these girls.
There you go. And they're certainly being groomed for a date, a so-called date or a hookup with a predator. Mm-hmm. 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 There's nothing out of bounds now if I've scripted the mind of a young girl where that's how she's to be treated and twerking and all that stuff. She hasn't got clue one what's going on in a predator's mind and what he has planned for this.
Also, I mean, a lot of this language which is used around, like they have a word to describe me, for example, the kind of the people who want to put me down and make up all kinds of names and lies. They call us swerfs, right? So they have a whole terminology for people who are critical of the sex industry. They say that we're kink shamers. I don't even want to, explore how ludicrous that is. They say that we are not body positive. that we want to shame people. And this lingo and language has not been created organically. It's been created top down. The term sex work was not created by a collective of prostitutes. It was created by the pimp lobby, by the industry, to try, because a lot of people say to me, Alex, I feel that using the term sex workers is respectful to the women in prostitution. I said, no, absolutely, this is not a job.
What is prostitution? Many people say it's the world's oldest profession, that it's a job, just like any other job. But when you look at the real lives and real experiences of those in prostitution, it's clear that it's unlike any other job. 98% of those bought in prostitution are women. 99% of the buyers are men. These numbers reveal that at its very core, prostitution is a system of gender inequality. It's a system where women exist to fulfill the sexual desires of men. She is seen as a product to be bought, used, and discarded. Within this system of inequality, women in prostitution routinely endure violent, exploitative, and dehumanizing acts at the hands of sex buyers and pimps that are incomparable to any other profession. Our society has created laws against workplace sexual harassment, but in prostitution, the job is sexual harassment. One survivor said, "As a prostitute, you do not get to frame the boundaries of your sexual experience." The largest study ever conducted on prostitution revealed that 63% of women in prostitution experience rape, and 71% experience multiple forms of physical violence. Yet another study revealed the types of violence women in prostitution experience, which included being kicked, punched, robbed, strangled, kidnapped, burnt with cigarettes, slashed with razor blades, and urinated on. As a result, the majority of women studied in prostitution met the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder on the same level as combat victims and torture victims. The mortality rate of women in prostitution is 200 times higher than the general population of women. These are not job hazards. These are statistical probabilities that women in prostitution will be sexually and physically assaulted and will suffer from severe mental and emotional trauma. This is not a job. It is a violation of human rights. It is a system of violence, exploitation, and inequality against women, and it must be stopped. Join the movement to end the business of exploitation. Share this video. Tell the world the truth about prostitution.
And you must refer to them as women in prostitution, because that is what they are. They're being exploited. And whilst you want to put the shame on the buyer, on the Johns and on the pimps, of course you don't want to stigmatize the women, but we have to explain that this is not work. This is not a career choice. And that this is an industry. When I have interviewed women who have been in the porn industry, their bodies last about 3 months and then they just give out, just literally gives up from the amount of abuse.
In the course of my nearly 30 years as a prostitute, I got to know hundreds of prostitutes, and I can honestly say I don't know one person who enjoyed it.
All right. Well, at the time, it was about 10 years ago. I can't remember the exact year, but I was studying. I was doing a Bachelor of Illustration, and I was trying to find work, and I had a friend, we're not friends anymore, but she was managing this brothel and asked if I wanted a job. And I've always been fascinated by the industry because it's glamorized, and I've read, I used to read a lot of books and sort of watch programs like, I don't know, Secret Diary of a Call Girl. There's one in Australia called Satisfaction about a glamorous legal brothel, and yeah, I've just always been fascinated, and that's how I was kind of lured in. Up until this point, I was kind of, prostitution's a legitimate choice for women. If they choose it, that's okay. It's no different from working as a massage therapist or anything. And the same with pornography. I would have defended the pornography the same way. That what's the harm in people watching nude people have sex. But I mean, the only reason I defended these industries is because I knew nothing about them. I didn't know the truth about them. And when I started working at this place, I was there for about 2 years, working 2 night shifts and a day shift. And in every room of that place, there was big screens with porn playing. And yeah, I'd never seen porn before, really. It was just so degrading. Like, I suffered a type of post-traumatic stress from just being exposed to this porn. I mean, it was never sort of diagnosed or anything like that, but that's, I couldn't get those images out of my head. The women, they didn't even look like women. They looked like 14-year-old girls. It was just awful. And that's when I started to realise how pornography was affecting men's sexuality, because when they would come into the brothel, which was, this was a legal brothel in Melbourne, Victoria, and the men would request exactly what they wanted in the porn. I would answer the phone, and when I got that job, I was told, "Oh, you're in the business of selling rooms, you're renting rooms," and I believed that, but that wasn't what I was doing. I was selling women. I was a pimp. I was selling women. That's what I had to do. I was the sort of first point of contact. I had to sort of, describe the women, sell the women, tell them what the services were, and then they sort of ask questions. And they would ask, and when they would ring up as well, they would ask, "Are there any new girls?" And that was code for young girls. They wanted, young girls. They wanted the girls as young as possible, because they wanted young and vulnerable, easy to sort of manipulate and coerce and sort of push into things that, they probably didn't want to do. In the porn, the girls look like 14-year-old girls. So that's what the men wanted.
And some of the abuses become so deviant, so far removed from reality. I mean, when I was first seeing Latina abuse, it's a full body experience. You're seeing somebody being gagged, screamed racial abuse at, and at the same time eating out of a dog bowl. It's like all of these horrible things are happening, and your heart beats faster, you're sweating, even just seeing this for 20 seconds. And I think the scar that leaves in that person who has seen that, is the reason why they come back. They come back again and again and again to get that feeling of, I think that was like a sexual trauma that they're coming back to revisit again and again and again, because Latina abuse, just one website, has more visits per month than NFL. This is a popular web. This is not some niche, facial abuse, Latina abuse. It's not some niche that I'm talking about. It's popular, normal, regular, average Joe stuff that young men are consuming. And we've no clue what that's going to do to them in 10 years' time.
Nancy Fox was another one of the projects. When I was trolling the area, I noticed her go in the house one night. Sometimes I would, anyway, put her down as a potential victim.
Let me ask you one thing, Mr. Rader. You used that term when you were patrolling the area. What do you mean by that?
It's called stalking or trolling.
So you were not working in any form or fashion.
I don't know if you read much about serial killers, they go through what they call the different phases. That's one of the phases they go through as a trolling stage. You're looking for a victim at that time, and that you could be trolling for months or years. But once you lock in on a certain person, then you become stalking, and that might be several of them. But you really home in on that person. They basically become that's the victim, or that's what you want to do.
Well, it is the training for the men. It's the training in sexual psychopathy. Number one, that's how you develop sexual psychopaths. It's all in a continuum.
What happened then?
Went back to finish the job on Catherine, and she was fighting. And at that point in time, I've been fighting her, and then I heard I don't know whether I was basically losing control. The strangulation wasn't working on her, and I used a knife on her.
Abduction fantasies and comments about getting rid of people. It was all part of a testimony today in the preliminary hearing for 3 people accused of killing a young Marine wife. Tender's reporter Allison Ash is now live at Vista with some of the disturbing testimony. Allison.
Yeah, a lot of the testimony that we heard today here in court is just simply too graphic for us to share with you on TV. It's all part of the BDSM scene that the prosecutor says Brittany Kilgore was not voluntarily involved in. It was Friday, April 13th, when Brittany Kilgore agreed to go on a harbor cruise with this man, Luis Perez. The young Marine wife never came home. Her body was found days later in Riverside County. Now Perez, known as Ivan, his mistress, Dorothy Margolino, or Miss D, and their slave, Jessica Lopez, are charged with murder. A former slave who lived in the Fallbrook house described some of the tools of their alternative lifestyle.
They had a spider web, which was made out of wood and chains, a spanking bench.
The judge ordered us not to show you the faces of the women who testified about sensitive personal issues. This woman testified she and Perez had an affair, which involved choking, spanking, and other sexual domination. There was also testimony that Margolino and Perez talked about abduction fantasies, where they would grab someone off the street and...
Usually there would be some sort of play involved, flogging, beating her in some fashion. Sometimes there was talk of a rape scenario.
All right, so she was in her bed when you turned on the lights in the bathroom?
Yeah, the bathroom, so I could get some light in there.
All right, what did you do then?
No, I manually strangled her when she started to scream.
So you used your hands?
Yes, sir.
And you strangled her? Did she die?
Yes.
All right, what did you do then?
After that, since I was in the sexual fantasy, I went ahead and stripped her. And probably went ahead and, I'm not sure if I tied her up at that point in time. But anyway, she was nude, and I put her on a blanket, went through her purse, some personal items in the house, took some pictures of her.
All right, you took some photographs of her. What kind of camera did you use?
Poor Lord.
Did you keep those photographs?
Yes, the police probably have them.
All right, what happened then?
That was it. She went through, I tied it, she was already dead, so I took pictures of her in different forms of bondage. And that's probably what got me in trouble was the bondage thing. So anyway, that's probably the main thing. But
those that actually take it to the extreme and shed blood and do away with their victims, they only have, as it were, pardon the pun, they only have a life expectancy of a certain amount of time, meaning the perpetrator, if he sheds blood, he's going to be found out at some point in time. So the average deviant sexual psychopath is not going to go that far. But by the time they go that far, there's a whole lot of things that have come over them, and it ain't pretty. And I've talked to those kind of guys.
In his jailhouse interview, Rader blamed his murder spree on that mysterious force he has always claimed was way beyond his control, Factor X.
Something I use it, I actually think I'm maybe possessed with demons. I was dropped on my head when I was a kid. I talked to some theological Christian people, and some of those people are really strong. They actually think, well, the Bible says that there's demons within you or can come into you. That's the only thing I can figure out. I have, something drove me to do this. Normal people just don't do this. You can't stop it. I can't stop it. It's just, it controls me. It's like it's in the driver's seat.
But the majority of them are going to use this kind of stuff where they have victims that remain alive and they keep going back to. And they torture. It amounts to torture.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And the thing about the thing that's not really spoken about much is these you know, this guy once tried to tell me that they were paid actresses. You know, he was saying to me, they're paid actresses. Why do you care? They're just paid actresses. You know, the life expectancy of a porn performer, when I say the career, it's 3 months until she's in and out of the industry. But on the long-term prognosis for a woman who has gone through the porn industry is 37. Now, whether or not that is from drug abuse because she's had to take drugs to cope with what she's been through, or suicide, or something that's happened to her because of her body that she's been through this abuse, but those are the facts. That's the statistic. And I mean, I wonder what really, like, these are statistics that should bring the industry down. But we know that the more degrading, the more debased, the more violent, the more depraved, and actually the more racist, the hotter the porn, the hotter the sizzle, the more visited it is. And I find that so it's like such a paradox when everyone is, you know, people were rioting in the street for the last year for equality and, you know, because of, you know, institutional racism, and no one's thinking to explore the millions of men that are getting off every day to ghetto gaggers and Latina abuse. I mean, it's quite frankly, it's laughable.
No one wants to touch that because that's the dirty little secret behind all of this. As a matter of fact, where are the marches that were planned by and supported by Planned Parenthood? Where are all the pink hats now over this real issue? You know, we heard that abortion is an existential issue. No, you're not going to live or die without an abortion. I'm not minimizing any of that. But when you're talking about the actual targeting of females and their existence, such as I say, Planned Parenthood is turning girls into boys and boys into girls. And they are helping to ensure that deviant men, porn-saturated men, who are getting off on women the night before, can walk into the likes of a Wee Spa and intimidate and threaten these women.
Several women confronted the staff at the Wee Spa in Los Angeles back in June. Now, there was one woman using the spa that day that hadn't been told that in America you're required to lie about everything. This woman thought you could just kind of report what you see. You could tell obvious truths. So she reported that there was a dude, a biological man, clearly biologically male, wandered around the women's section of the spa with his junk hanging out, and the spa wouldn't do anything about it. Here was the exchange.
It's okay for a man to go into the women's section, show his penis around the other women, young little girls underage. Your spa, Wee Spa, condone that. Is that what you're saying? Like I asked. It's so he could stay there. He could stay there? What sexual orientation? I see a it lets me know he's a man. He's a man. He is a man. He is not no female. He is not a female, sweetie. Okay? Girls down there, other women who are highly offended for what they just saw. And you did nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, you sided with him.
Over at Slate, their entirely non-binary staff was deeply offended by this. They call the video you just saw a, quote, transphobic hoax. But journalist Andy No, who tells the truth under all circumstances, is reporting that, quote, 4 women and a minor girl all came forward to allege that a man called Darren G. Marriager was partially erect, I'm sorry to repeat this, in the women's section of the Wee Spa. So it turns out on Monday, charges of indecent exposure were discreetly filed against this guy. He's also facing felony charges for indecent exposure in a separate incident. So this was not his first time. You will not be surprised to learn. Andy No broke this story. He joins us tonight. Andy, thanks so much for coming on. So it turns out it wasn't a transphobic hoax. It was totally real, correct?
That's right. From the beginning, the establishment press was echoing the messages from the radical trans activists, which was trying to discredit the woman who recorded that video and to cast doubt on the entire narrative. As you just said, Slate and other publications said it was a hoax or a likely hoax. I think what's disappointing about how this all played out is that the people who previously say believe all women, when women and girls were speaking out, they were silenced.
And then they go after shutting down rape shelters. If I'm a pimp, see, people don't understand the morals of pimps like they have any, right? But people don't understand a deviant man has no problem dressing in drag if that's going to help him obtain what he wants. They have no problem. How many men did I deal with that were busted for breaking and entering, where they would go into the daughter's bedroom or a woman's bedroom and steal underwear?
An accused thief breaks into women's home not to steal their money or gadgets or electronics, but their clothes. And now the suspect is in police custody.
Jacob Davidson was arrested yesterday, and now we're getting new details on the disturbing break-ins here. ABC 13's Maya Shea live with what you've learned today, Maya.
Yeah, even the Pasadena police chief, who we talked to today, calls all these charges very creepy. And we've learned that he served jail time on the exact same crime just 2 years ago.
Wasn't the only thing Peppers is accused of taking, but women's underwear and high heels as well. Sydney.
Friday and Sunday, saying he had already stolen 12 pairs of high heels and all of her underwear. Police told us Peppers was wearing women's lingerie underneath his clothing when they arrested him. However, the homeowner told me she confirmed with the police the lingerie he was wearing wasn't hers.
But this is not the first time that Davidson is accused of this. According to law enforcement, in 2019, he was accused of stealing underwear from the laundry room at St. Edward's University in Austin. And court records indicate he's on parole for enticing a child and more burglary charges.
2 months ago, police say someone was making their way inside these dorms to do something strange, according to CU Police Chief Doreen Jokerst.
Absolutely. During the month of October, he is seen going several times into the residence halls where he is stealing undergarments from the laundry room.
Investigators figured out the man is 33-year-old Nicholas Lorenzo, a registered sex offender for exposing himself in 2010. He's now facing 26 charges for stealing underwear from the dorms and 1 charge for sexually assaulting a girl. And Jokers says what's disturbing is what they found in his apartment.
Stephen Sorg faces burglary, theft, and drug charges. The Floyd County prosecutor says a woman twice caught him breaking into her house last week. She told police he took underwear belonging to her and her underage daughter. According to police, surveillance cameras caught Sorg on video when he came back a 3rd time. He's also accused of stealing underwear, a laptop, and wallet from another house.
A man is behind bars accused of breaking into a house, then stealing underwear, a dress, and shoes, all while the victims were asleep.
Court documents say the suspect, Michael Wiley Jr., went into a woman's home 8:15 Saturday morning, left his SUV parked outside. He went inside, rummaging through her clothes. He left a BB gun and flashlight inside her home and an open condom outside her porch. According to court documents, police found a large amount of women's underwear inside the suspect's car, along with porn and sex toys. At this point, we're not sure if there are more victims.
I'm Julia Dahl for 48 Hours Crimesider. Police say 31-year-old Anand Gross followed one of his co-workers home and snuck into her house earlier this month. The woman told police she saw a flashlight upstairs and ran to a neighbor's house where they called 911. When police arrived, they arrested Gross, who had 2 pairs of the woman's underwear with him. But things got even stranger when they searched his car the next day. Inside a duffel bag, police found Ziploc baggies containing women's underwear, hair, and panty liners, each labeled with a woman's name.
See, people don't understand that if they don't understand deviance. Guys have no problem dressing in women's underwear if it gains. They already do that because they're deviant. If they can gain access into a woman's private space or a child's private space, they'll do it in a heartbeat. How do I know? Because they tell me that.
Yeah.
That's what people don't understand, that it's no longer about lust. By the time a guy becomes deviant, it's not about lust anymore. It is about the effect he can have on another person. And it's not just power and control, but it's defrauding and defiling and traumatizing.
And when she came out, I handcuffed her, and I don't really remember whether... Sir?
You handcuffed her? You had a pair of handcuffs?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Well, anyway, I handcuffed her, had her lay on the bed, and then I tied her feet, and then I was also undressed to a certain degree, and then I got on top of her, and then I reached over, took either her feet were tied or not tied. Anyway, I think I had a belt. I took the belt and then strangled her with a belt at that time.
All right, after you had strangled her, what happened then?
Okay. After I strangled her with the belt, I took the belt off and retied that with pantyhose, real tight. Removed the handcuffs and tied those with pantyhose. Can't remember the colors right now. I think I maybe retied her feet. What they had not already, they were probably already tied. Her feet were, and at that time masturbated, sir.
That's what people don't understand. That's the further a guy goes down, that's why it's not about the body anymore. It's not about sex and sensuality. It's about traumatizing and defiling.
He was a killer with the ultimate cover. As a base commander in the Canadian Air Force, Colonel Russell Williams comforted families of the fallen, rubbed shoulders with the Prime Minister, and even flew planes for the Queen. But no one, including his wife, knew that he was also a sexual deviant, burglar, rapist, and murderer. And today, what began as fetish and fantasy led to a life sentence of solitary misery. For more than 20 years, he was a model airman and husband, described as a bright, shining star of the Canadian Air Force. Tonight, he is the most notorious pervert, rapist, and serial killer in recent Canadian history. After 4 days of stomach-churning evidence led to a life sentence, a nation wonders how this married colonel could have led such a deplorable double life.
How could anybody do such a horrible, horrible thing?
Over his flawless career, Russell Williams rose from decorated pilot to commander of support missions in Afghanistan and became the man in charge of Canada's largest and busiest airbase. But through those years of overachievement, there were urges. And 5 years ago, at age 42, he began acting on his fetish for women's underclothes by breaking into homes of strangers and acquaintances alike to dress up, masturbate, and steal samples for his personal collection.
You ever been interviewed by the police in a room like this before?
I have never been interviewed like this.
Oh, no? Okay.
More than 80 of his home invasions went unsolved until 27-year-old Jessica Lloyd disappeared in January. Detectives found distinctive tire and boot tracks near her home, and a week later, a sharp-eyed officer noticed the suspicious tread matched the tires on Williams' SUV. Williams sat frozen in the interrogation room, agonizing his own fate. But eventually, he came clean, and over a 10-hour confession described 2 rapes, 82 burglaries, and the murders of both Lloyd and 37-year-old Corporal Marie-France Camus. In both cases, he tied them up, beat and raped them repeatedly for hours while recording it all on video. On one occasion, he stopped to actually adjust the lighting while ignoring his victim's pleas. "If I die," Lloyd cries out on video, "will you make sure to let my mom know that I love her?" Dr. Michael Stone is a forensic psychiatrist who studied and cataloged hundreds of deviant killers for his book, The Anatomy of Evil. So you have how many different gradations of evil? 22?
22.
And where does he fit on the evil chart?
Either 18, which is moderately prolonged torture, or 22 for considerably prolonged and very agonizing. So high up on the scale.
Worst of the worst.
Yes.
Dr. Stone says Williams may be the most highly functioning serial killer he has ever seen, and his military discipline actually helped him lead 2 separate lives. He's also unique in that he started his crimes later in life to pose in women's clothing. Dennis Rader, the notorious BTK killer who murdered 10 in Kansas, was another.
And then when I went back, Josephine had woke back up.
What did you do then?
And I took her to the basement and eventually hung her.
All right, you hung her in the basement?
Yes, sir.
All right, did you do anything else at that time?
Yes, I had some sexual fantasies, but that was after she was hung.
Though his parents split when he was young, there was no evidence of abuse, as Williams excelled in expensive schools. Yet another detail to make him the subject of fascination for criminal scientists and the object of loathing for everyone else.
We want him locked in there till the day he dies.
See, people don't understand that if they don't understand deviance. Guys have no problem dressing in women's underwear if it gains. They already do that because they're deviant. If they can gain access into a woman's private space or child's private space, they'll do it in a heartbeat. How do I know? Because they tell me that. That's what people don't understand. That it's no longer about lust. By the time a guy becomes deviant, it's not about lust anymore. It is about the effect he can have on another person. And it's not just power and control, but it's defrauding and defiling and traumatizing. That's what people don't understand. That's the further a guy goes down, that's why it's not about the body anymore. It's not about sex and sensuality. It's about traumatizing and defiling. That's the stair-step process downward. And so that's why it becomes more and more degrading, because that's what deviance does. And at the very end, they have no use for her, so they will kill her. They'll execute her. They'll dismember her. Mm-hmm. Now we've got snuff porn.
His killing field was Milwaukee, and he got away with murder for more than a decade. But how could any of this happen? For the first time ever, Nancy Glass is here inside the world of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Bill, when I sat down opposite Jeffrey Dahmer for this interview, I wondered what he would tell me, how hard it would be to get him to discuss his horrific crimes. What I found was that he was very forthcoming. He volunteered details that may be difficult to hear.
When I moved to Milwaukee in '81, I started reading pornography, going to the bookstores. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. When you depersonalize another person and view them as just an object for pleasure instead of a living, breathing human being, it seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do.
So this hypnosissy porn is quite the hook for getting these men addicted and these boys addicted. And it's hypnosissy porn is often sold with academics to be a lifestyle. It's not a lifestyle. It's an addiction.
It's Trisha James. I am 30 years old and I am in the adult film industry. When I was 13, I started transitioning. I have spent over $100,000 on plastic surgery and I'm not done yet. Money's meant to be spent. Today I'm going to get fillers. I'm really hoping that the doctor does all that I want.
It's as you are solidifying, you're having a full body experience. What do I mean by that? You are reciting mantras like, I am a sissy, I am a sissy, I am a sissy, sissify me master, whilst having a full body experience, an orgasm. Tell me how a 15-year-old boy is supposed to contend with that. I mean, it's so dark, so sick, so twisted, so disturbing.
To be kidnapped, put on hormones, drugged, restrained and used like this repeatedly, being trained to be a sissy whore. That's the dream. Then, they sell you to a pimp.
So a lot of these doctors are suggesting to their clients, to their patients, to consider raising their money either on GoFundMe or by actually engaging in prostitution.
Eventually that led to frequenting the gay bars. And then one time I brought this young man back to the hotel room, the Ambassador Hotel.
It's Trisha James. I am 30 years old and I am in the adult film industry.
Was just planning on drugging him and spending the night with him. I had no intention of hurting him.
And I don't go into the world of the truly sick and depraved pornography. I just go at the normal stuff that's available and take a look and report on it, right? So you can only imagine what the underbelly looks like.
Afterwards,
Were you repulsed? Were you upset?
No, at the time it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
Because I'm just surface level looking at hypnosis porn and seeing these 25,000 videos and watching 10-second clips. I'm not going into the underground, the stuff that's sold, that's not hosted on Pornhub. God only knows what that, hardcore hypnosis porn actually is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like ritual sacrifices or something. I mean,
I had fantasies about picking up a hitchhiker and taking him back to the house and having complete control and dominance over him.
The hitchhiker's name was Stephen Hicks. He was just 18. Jeffrey Dahmer took him to his parents' house. There he strangled him with a barbell. He dismembered the body and hid it in a drain pipe. It was Jeffrey Dahmer who gave those details to the police in his confession.
I had these obsessive desires and thoughts wanting to control them, to, I don't know how to put it, possess them permanently.
And that's why you killed them.
Right.
Addiction to all pornography is harmful, but addiction to hypnosis porn is actually life-threatening for many people.
I'd go to the nightclubs, drink, watch the striptease shows, and if I didn't meet anyone at the bars, I'd go to the bath clubs and meet someone there, offer them money, and we'd go back to the apartment, have a few drinks. I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
Why did you photograph them?
It was my way of remembering their appearance, their physical beauty. I also wanted to keep if I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons.
Addiction to all pornography is harmful, but addiction to hypnosis porn is actually life-threatening for many people.
I started having these obsessive thoughts when I was about 15 and 16, and they got worse and worse.
What were your fantasies about?
They were sexual fantasies of control, power, complete dominance.
To be kidnapped, put on hormones, drugged, restrained and used like this repeatedly, being trained to be a sissy whore. That's the dream. Then, they sell you to a pimp.
They became reality.
Was there pleasure in that fantasy?
There was excitement, fear, pleasure, all mixed together.
Jeffrey Dahmer fulfilled his fantasies by murdering and dismembering 17 young men. When it was revealed that most of the victims were black or homosexual, people in Milwaukee were incensed. Many felt that was why he went after them and why the police didn't seem to care when their families reported them missing. 10 of your 17 victims were black. Were they racially motivated?
It was not racially motivated. It was not sexual preference. It was just to find an obsession with the best-looking young man I could find.
And then we have child porn. Child porn is at the very lowest. So for a guy that's if a guy's gotten into child porn, he doesn't want people to know he's consumed all that. He starts with adult porn.
This is a scan of a sex addict brain, an 18-year-old sex addict brain. And we compare that to a normal brain, and at the naked eye, we can tell this is not normal. Now, if we compare that to someone who has cocaine addiction, this is a person who has cocaine addiction. As you can tell, in the prefrontal cortex and the parietal lobe, they're very similar, although you don't see the top part of this brain. The scalloping is about the same if we looked at this sagittally. The prefrontal cortex, for lack of a better word, is our CEO. It really controls every other aspects of the brain. So the whole front part of our brain, this is what makes us human in general. Usually in sexual addiction, there's some low activation here. Our CEO drops off, we don't make good decisions. Normally, in naked eye, you can tell that this is not particularly normal or healthy. This person's just not using as much brain because they're used to using the sex and other things to make their brain active. So the excitement of pornography. So we'll see a lot of the same deactivation from cocaine and sexual addiction. You can tell again from someone who's a normal brain, we obviously don't see that degree of scalloping. It takes over the mind.
And so with the kind of like the prevalence of this this pornography that I've been discussing, I don't even go into the most deviant stuff. I go into the standard stuff that the vast majority of young men are watching. They're watching the gonzo porn. Do you know what gonzo porn is? It's shot in the style of like You're the Person. It's like shot almost like first hands. It's the most like violent, hard, like really, really hard. And that is the average. And if people are going to say, "Oh, I don't believe you," people are simply watching, just normal, blue stuff, right? No, you can go on to top watched porn videos, and you can see what's number 1, what's number 2, what's number 3, what's number 4. They release it every single day. So we know what the people are watching. We know what the men are watching. They're watching the gonzo porn.
When the average 12-year-old boy puts porn into Google, he's directed immediately to the porn tube sites such as YouPorn and Pornhub. And the most accessible is actually called gonzo porn. That's the shorthand term for the violent porn that has no storyline. If you want more softcore, less violent porn, you're going to have to spend a good 10 to 15 minutes looking for it. And don't tell me that the average 12, 13-year-old boy is going to start looking for that for 10, 15 minutes. He is going to go to that which is the most accessible.
The images they're seeing are about sexuality fused to domination, an aggressive sexuality, a sexuality that objectifies women, treats them as nothing more than objects for male pleasure.
Said you'll do it, right? Right?
Most porn ends up with women being not only presented as the victims of violence, but often presented as the victims of violence who love it.
I want you to do anything you want.
So girls are learning to be compliant, and they're learning that what's most important is to be desirable to the boys.
Whatever you want to do to her, however debasing, however vile, she says yes. So in a way, what you're doing is you're socializing men into thinking that women will consent to anything.
It teaches a very one-sided, dangerous, emotionless, almost humanless sexual experience that so many young men are now seeing as being normal. This is how it happens.
14-year-old high school freshman, Daisy Coleman, says Matthew Barnett sexually assaulted her while she was unconscious. Barnett would later claim the encounter was consensual.
22-year-old Madison Smith says the encounter started off with consensual sex, but things turned violent when he started to strangle her and force her to perform a sex act.
And like you said, their barriers are being broken each time because it's like a ceiling. They're getting to that ceiling. It's not enough. They want to break it. They want to get to the next ceiling. They want to get to the next one. And when you take that into the world around you. When you're 15 years old or 14 years old and you take that into the world around you, it's no surprise to me that their female, friends, female schoolmates are now not feeling comfortable in their female bodies and are seeking, transition or don't want to be girls anymore. Or maybe these girls have thought, maybe I should have a look at this. Maybe I should get into this. Lots of teenage girls are looking at porn. I can only imagine. In fact, I know what happens. I think it rewires their brain. And you mentioned the Wee Spa. The Wee Spa is the tip of the iceberg. A man going into the Wee Spa and exposing himself is the tip of the iceberg. We have 300 male inmates that are going to be moved to the female estate under the direction of Scott Wiener and the approval of Gavin Newsom. Many of these women have written to the Women's Liberation Front saying, I'm scared. There's men with penises, many of whom are sex offenders, who are going to be housed with us. Why are you doing this? Please don't. I mean, handwritten letter after handwritten letter after handwritten letter.
Tonight, a special report on what's taking place inside California's female prisons. In September 2020, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Senate Bill 132 into law, requiring prisons to house inmates based on their chosen gender identity. Now, biological men are sharing prison cells with terrified women, and one woman is reportedly pregnant. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
In California, biological male criminals are allowed to be housed in female prisons if they identify as women. Women's Liberation Front, or WOLF, a feminist organization which is in direct contact with inmates and staff, tells NTD that at least one woman in Central California Women's Facility is pregnant as a result of the male inmates. Because pregnancy is private health data, the reports cannot be verified with the prison.
Some of the men have been rounded up and put in segregation on the yard where the woman who is supposedly pregnant. So they've taken 3 of them and put them in administrative segregation.
Lauren Adams is Wolf's legal counsel. She says several weeks ago, the prison began giving out condoms and providing information about inmates' options if they get pregnant. At the time, Wolf called the new resources a tacit admission by officials that women should expect to be raped when housed in prison with men, where all sex is considered non-consensual by default within the system. Adams says she thinks many people picture someone like Laverne Cox from Orange is the New Black when they think of transgender prisoners, but she says this is far from the truth. Many of the ones now housed in female prisons still look like men, and some, she said, are reportedly not taking their hormones, and one has grown a beard. And worse yet, Adams says some of the men that have been transferred into women's prisons are sex offenders.
One of the men who is in the yard where the pregnant woman is and who has been put in segregation is a sex offender. He has been convicted of multiple forcible rapes, but that's not what he's serving time for this time.
She says another male inmate housed in the California Institution for Women is serving time for molesting 2 children. As of April, around 250 biological male prisoners filed requests to transfer to women's prisons. So far, only about 20 transfers have been processed. None have been denied. Numerous women have written to Wolf saying they're terrified.
Having to use the toilet in front of men, having to shower in front of men. It's demoralizing and humiliating. We have religious women in there who, as part of their practice of their religion, rely on sex separation. And so on a daily 24-hour basis, they're being, that right's being infringed upon. It's really unreal.
She says the female inmates never got a say in the law, and even now, their calls for help go unheard. Adams says they feel forgotten.
They just feel like nobody cares about us, nobody cares about our safety, nobody cares about our feelings. 86% of incarcerated women have histories of sexual or physical abuse. Many have PTSD. The mental health options in there are very limited, and I don't know how you treat anxiety that's associated with literally being locked up with a sex offender. It's not like you can medicate that away or counsel it away.
In a July phone call to Wolf, one female inmate said prison guards told inmates they won't segregate the men from the women's cells because they're worried about getting sued.
And how do you think that we
feel. We do not feel safe knowing you're scared of a lawsuit. We do not feel safe that you're going to put them in our rooms because you're afraid they'll claim discrimination, when all along the discrimination has been against us.
Adams said the situation cannot be blamed on the prisons, since the policy was made law by California politicians.
So the WeSpa, I understand, it's a good example of what's happening. But, you know, we're talking about prisons, we're talking about rape shelters, we're talking about where women are trying to exit prostitution. They need exit strategies. They need to be in a women-only environment most of the time. Or maybe they just feel more comfortable with it. And can you imagine if WeSpa man was bunking with you in jail and you're a woman? I mean, I didn't know that we torture. I didn't know that in California you were being sent to Guantanamo Bay to be, you know, humiliated and, you know, subjected to cruel and unusual punishments. It's so horrifying. And this is the whole idea about it being top down. This is not a grassroots movement, right? This is something which is top down.
Alix, I want to reemphasize what you just said, because I can speak definitively, having worked on psychology staff for 11 years in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, having run one of the state's two at that time, high-intensity sex offender treatment unit, and I've done sex offender treatment for years. I'm a certified sex offender treatment provider. I can assure you that 100% of the men that are going to be transitioning, asking to be sent to a male prison, I can guarantee you 100%. If somebody wants to debate me, come on. And let's look at the files. I've looked at the files. I'll say 99%. I'm going to say 100% are sex offenders, and sex offenders of a violent kind, the kind that we think that the PR spin out in the public is trying to say, no, these are sensitive men that need to be protected. No, every individual that works in or lives in a prison knows that those guys that are transvestites that like male clientele, shall we say, male companionship, want to remain in the male prison. Pedophiles,
that's exactly right.
Pedophiles don't dress up as women, meaning the true sensitive ones. Okay, deviant men have no problem, and now you've given them the keys to years worth of hunting a captive audience. If I, as a sex offender, this is how their minds work. If I, as a deviant man who likes to traumatize women, if all I have to do, if I'm in for 5 years or even less, doesn't matter. If I know that you, Mr. and Mrs. State of California prison system, if I know you're going to open the door for an entire prison of women for me, and all I have to do is say the magic word that I'm trans, give me a form, I'm signing. Why? Because now you're going to put me in a prison loaded with females, and I'm going to have a heyday. And I'm going to rape, and I'm going to just have a ton of fun. Plus, as you indicated, I may be connected with pimps in an organized fashion, and now I work it with prison administrators. This is not too far-fetched. I'm going to go and make sure my property remains my property. I'm going to be placed in the exact same prison as my former property that, as you said, they're trying to escape prostitution, and I'm going to remind them, see, I told you, wherever you run, nowhere to hide, we'll find you. You might as well give it up. And when you get out, here's your home plan, here's the address, and it's back with the pimp you go.
Nikki, street name Green Eyes, ran from the program 2 months ago. Because she went back to using crack, Nikki hasn't slept for days. Nikki first got into Fresh Start when she was arrested in 2007.
I needed a fresh start. Basically, I needed a start, period. I never had much of a start at life before I used drugs, before I started prostitution, for anything. The prostitution for me wasn't that big of a deal because I've been molested since I was real little, and I've been used a whole lot growing up, and nothing was ever done about it, so I was kind of already in that trap.
So you're going to find the suicide rate in these institutions are going to start to go up because of this exact policy.
And also, you know, the really hilarious thing, I mean, it's such a joke. In order to be accepted into the female estate in California, you have to go to 7 lessons. This is what the men have to do. They have to make the declaration, of course, that they are women, right? And then they have to do 7 7-hour-long courses. And I had a look at some of this stuff, and they have to learn about the hierarchies of female prison. Right, they have to learn about how to fit into the hierarchies there, and that some of the women may reject you, but this is how you overcome it. It's layer upon layer of deception. I mean, imagine sitting a man down and saying, sitting a sex offender down and saying, I'm going to explain to you in detail that the hierarchies which exist in the female prison, which you're going to be transferred to, so that you can better understand the pecking order. I mean, was this created by a pedophile? Was this created by a sex offender? You know, was that? I mean, this is a course that that is out there for us to read. I mean, I read the materials of the course, and I thought I couldn't be shocked anymore, and I was blown away.
This is impacting women and children in all sorts of directions. This whole trans deception. And Alix, you have been great with your time. Anything else that you want to leave us with as far as what we need to know?
Yeah. So I would definitely say go to the Gender Mapping Project, go to gendermapper.org, find out who the gender clinics are in your area. If you feel like you want to add something to it. If you're concerned, if you feel your daughter is on OnlyFans and you want help getting her off, please contact me, because I won't reveal my ways, but I do have ways to try to get them off. If there's a GoFundMe for your daughter or son's surgery and you would like help removing that, please get in touch with me. If you have a testimony that you want told and no one else is listening, come to the Gender Mapping Project and we want to hear about it.
My message to parents, Alix, you just said it, is that you cannot be passive about this. You have to become active in your parenting. Do not become woke, because you will become blind. You have to understand there are a lot of different kinds of people, a lot of different forces that are actively interested in gaining the attention of your children, and none of it is for good. And they will always come with a smile on their face. So they dumb you down so they gain access to your kid. Alix, thank you. Your expertise and your experience and your knowledge, it shows. And so I encourage people to visit your website, and I trust we'll touch base in the not too distant future.
I hope so.
Okay. Thanks for being a part of the program.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to Predator Watch, dedicated to shining the light of truth about the nature of the most sophisticated of sexual predators most likely to target places where victims are most easily accessed. For John Euler and the entire team, thanks for listening.
Predator Watch has been sponsored by SurvivorSupport.net. As a non-profit organization, Survivor Support is dependent upon the generosity of people who believe in its mission of supporting survivors. Please consider becoming a monthly supporter of this important work.